Hello, welcome to our first quarterly CISO catch-up. I'm thrilled to have Moriah Hara on the call, a tag cyber analyst and a former CISOs of organizations like Wells Fargo and Bank of Montreal. Welcome, Moriah.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Let's get started. Could we start with a quick background from your perspective? You've had a fantastic progression in helping organizations like Wells Fargo and BMO strengthen their security posture. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I've been doing cyber for about 23 years now. And I've worked with a lot of financials and banking, insurance, payment as well. In the last few years, I've been the CISO, Wells Fargo Capital Markets, as well as Interpublic Group, as well as second line CISO for Bank of Montreal Harris Bank. And I now have a number of clients as well as I'm a tag research and an advisor.
That's fantastic. It's just today's conversation is going to revolve around this question about weighing in as a CISO of a financial services organization on this question about, can anyone claim 100% confidence in document security? We've seen numerous headlines and organizations and CISOs concerned about the various forms through which organizations' users are interacting with content. Files downloaded, files exchanged, files uploaded. And it's not just the employees, right? It's employees, partners, consumers. And so the topic is really very relevant at this time where companies, organizations, security leaders are trying to weigh how to protect the unknown and enable the business to be secure at the same time. So with that conversation, I'd love to jump in and have this conversation around what we see, what are you seeing, and what advice would you have for other security leaders that are evaluating their security posture. So why don't we start on your side, Moriah, and I think you were curious about what we do. So should we want to start there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, listen, CISOs are inundated by vendors. So what I'd like to hear is, what does Votiro do in simple words? And what is your differentiator? And why would we need you today?
Votiro is a zero trust content security company. We detect, disarm, and deliver safe content anywhere content's used inside of an organization. Our unique value proposition is we're proactively protecting organizations' content against known and unknown threats. I mean, think of all the places a user downloads or uploads files today. They get content via email, web downloads, portal uploads. They exchange files with partners and supply chain vendors. Do you know if it's safe for you to open those files? We answer that question applying zero trust principles. We don't trust any file. We'll ensure that we remove all the hidden objects, executables, links out of the document and deliver safe content to the users and applications. So in doing so, we're ensuring 100% confident that the content that a user is getting is safe.
Okay, so what you're saying is, I mean, antivirus scanner, as an example, they may scan your document, but they only identify potentially less than 50% of the malware out there. There's a lot of malware that is not known to them, and that can still enter your environment. Now, you say, CISOs can now be 100% confident. The files that are coming into the organization, getting uploaded into your organization by external organizations or Slack channels by employees, you're saying CISOs can have 100% confidence that files coming in are going to be malware free. How can you promise that?
Great question. I mean, if you look at the traditional approach of file security, it's always been looking for malware. and it's only as good as the signatures that you have. We, on the other hand, are not looking for malware. What we're saying is, let's look for the good content that needs to be delivered to the user. So if you take a PDF file or an Excel file, ensure that the good content, including macros, including graphics, and texts and formulas, are all in that usable content. And that's what gets delivered to the end user. We leave behind a lot of the leftover bits. That's the unknown bit, right? That could potentially become a zero-day attack or a ransomware attack or a new variant of a malware that was just introduced in the wild. So we're effectively providing a proactive prevention versus recursive detection and response.
Yeah, no, I really like that because, again, there's so much unknown out there. And what you're saying is, again, whether we know it or don't know it, you're removing any executable content that could be harmful entering the environment, only leaving us with the positives. So that's quite an exciting solution, especially when you think about the concept of zero trust being to not trust anything, no matter where it comes from, and to locally validate and continuously validate whatever is coming in. So that's really exciting for me.
Yeah, we actually did a literal application of zero trust. We don't trust any file. If it's a known bad file, we'll block them. If it's content that needs to go to the finance officer, we're ensuring that the content that she needs is safe for her to open, whether it's password protected or zip files, that they are cleansed and delivered safely. I mean, most recently, we saw a research report that just came out where from Palo Alto's threat research team that said 60% of the malware were delivered via PDFs in email.
Yeah.
It's just one channel through which a user is interacting. But if you look at the broad application of what we do, it's through multiple channels through which content gets downloaded. Not just email, but collaboration tools, web browsers, and that's happening on a daily basis. So how do you help organizations proactively prevent against known and unknown threats?
Yeah, and I think nobody can forget one of the largest data breaches of all time, which was the RSA breach, where the attackers sent a number of emails to random employees with Word documents with macros inside them. And that's literally how they infected the environment and then compromised the algorithm, which kind of froze out the entire industry and banking system of internet connectivity that week. It was quite shocking. So again, file-based infection, I think, is just continuing to rapidly evolve. And not just Palo Alto, but in the 2022 Verizon data breach report, file-based malware and infection has continued to be the top threat targeting organizations. So I think it's something that's certainly growing. It certainly aligns with the people-centric target that we're seeing. You know, if you ask me what some of my top concerns are from a risk perspective, it's people again being targeted and supply chain.
So true, and that methodology, bad actors continue to use that methodology. It's a tried and true method to infiltrate by infecting a file and then introducing that into organization. So that was actually the genesis for the company and how it was formed. The founder of the company used to do pen testing, and he would fly around the world helping organizations with pen testing. And by start a project on a Monday, and by Wednesday, he would send weaponized files to call data sheet to marketing, called invoice to finance, called resume to HR, and was able to get 100% open rate. And so that's where...
Surprise. I mean, that's the way. I mean, years ago, we used to try to hack through the firewall. Now it's pretty well exclusively hacking through the people, the end users. much, much easier because people are wired to trust. I think they're raised to, inherently trust people that they work with, that they're interacting with. And it really requires a pretty hard cultural shift in people's minds on how they have to work and stay paranoid. Some people have the natural paranoia and the antennas up, and some people don't.
Right. And just the sheer number of channels through which a user now gets to access content is amazing. There's like so many other channels through which they're opening content, whether it's through Slack and collaboration tools, browser downloads, people sharing magic links and saying, click on it, and you can get to completely bypass your security controls that you have and get to a storage outside of your organization that you have to download content. So let's switch gears, and I wanted to ask you a couple of questions from your vantage point. And one was, as CISOs, how are you prioritizing the enterprise security posture applying zero trust principles?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think zero trust is all about moving from location-specific security architecture to data security architecture. So the very old kind of perspective of let's create the moat, let's put a few firewalls in front of our internal network. Everything inside the network is secure. Now we assume that the internal network and end users can be compromised at any time. So assuming that your internal business environment can have attackers roaming around, how are you then implementing more localized security solutions, more layers of defense that, again, are closer to protecting your data and your endpoints? That's really what it's all about. So, one of the big focuses is continuous monitoring and analytics. And really, zero trust is not just like a one-time check or a one-time authentication, but it's a continuous analysis and validation of user and device behavior, network traffic, textual data, including files and content that come in. You want to identify security threats as they come in. You don't want to leave it, to your proxy or third-party solutions. As soon as that data somehow gets to the user, especially if they're using, BYOB devices that can infect their business applications, you want to make sure that any data coming into your business sandbox is getting validated and checked. And so that's really what the concept is all about in terms of applying zero trust principles for your enterprise environment.
Got it. We're now already in mid 2023. So quick question. You speak to a lot of CISOs, and as you're looking at the mid-year where we are today, what's top of mind for CISOs today?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. From a risk perspective, I can tell you almost everyone agrees that the top couple of threats continues to be people. So socially engineering people through spear phishing, through file-infected malware, through hyperlinks and documents that are getting sent to them. Supply chain risk, obviously. We saw what happened with the Mandiant hack, which allowed backdoors to some of the biggest banks and defense companies in the country, where if you can compromise a third-party tool, such as a network monitoring tool like SolarWinds, which most organizations were running, and I can tell you that the third-party security program at most companies were not evaluating or did not consider SolarWinds a high risk. It was not evaluating the security maturity of that company. If you can breach SolarWinds, they are directly sending code into your environment. So as we are adopting even more and more cloud-based and external connections into our environment, what is the threat of having infectious code coming from all of these exfil points is kind of scary. And I think that is, you keep hearing about supply chain, software security, SBOM. We talk about artificial intelligence. Developers today are using AI to help build their software. And we don't always know what the source of the code snippets that AI is providing. So I think, things are rapidly changing in that area. I would also say budgets. I think budgets, listen, in the last, I would say, ending in about 2022, from 2010 to 2020, even 2012 to 2020 or so, a lot of organizations kept seeing their budget go up. And many organizations, if they asked for justifiable, spending, they would get it. But I found even before COVID, a lot of at least the larger organizations, their budget, started getting frozen. I mean, that we had a decent budget. Maybe it was 10% of the tech spend, whatever, percentage you want to evaluate what security should have. And they were starting to the business started asking security about removing the fat, removing duplicative products, removing products that weren't really helping. And also, there's a lot of pressure from organizations to bring in, bleeding edge, next gen solutions. So there's also an ask to really take advantage of the tools that we did invest in, and make sure that those were working. In a couple of other areas, there's a lot of noise that the SOC has to kind of mull through in terms of identifying, what's real, what's not, in terms of potential incidents or lateral movement in the environment. And that includes quarantine files, right? Files that we're not sure if they're bad or not, having to communicate with the business whether those documents should be released or not. That's why something like a more local file-based security solution that can immediately deliver secure documents can help, with timing and efficiency. And I would say, lastly, I think it's really important for security teams to continue to self-educate themselves with next-gen architecture principles, with, how AI is affecting security and privacy. I do see security leaders, this is a moment that security leaders could really kind of get in front of how we govern AI inside the company. AI is a combination of, privacy elements, big data collection, leakage of data potentially to third and fourth party products that are using AI. So, I think security is in a good spot to really help educate the environment and put some guardrails as well.
That makes sense, especially I don't envy the role of a CISO today, right? They're in the middle of being a business leader, enabling the business to run securely. They're the compliance officer, trying to ensure that the compliance is on top. And then they're also trying to stay ahead of all the innovations that are happening in the marketplace, while proverbially doing more with less, right? With that backdrop, I mean, one of the things that I really would love to hear is sort of your advice to other CISOs. As you're consolidating platforms, and then you have solution providers like us who are introducing our capabilities as value add to the existing infrastructure or existing platforms. What advice would you have for other security leaders on how they would evaluate new technologies in the marketplace?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one thing that I highly recommend to a lot of CISOs and security leaders is every month gathering with your security team and really examining and analyzing the list of security incidents that happened that month, along with your threat intel team, telling you where they see emerging threats. Because if you're just following a compliance checklist or a framework, those are usually about 2 years old. So based on the threats that you're currently seeing, plus the threats that your team is telling you are going to emerge, you want to closely align your security architecture and your tool sets with that and be ready when the attacks or the new types of attacks and emerging attacks happen. So, of course, when you're looking at evaluating a solution, you want it to be aligned closely to the business case to reduce risk. That's an obvious one. You also want to make sure that the solution is an open platform. It's API centric, so it allows developers to integrate other applications and your other security tools, so they can talk to each other. So that's a no-brainer. I think most security teams are also looking for a self-improvement, almost AI, ML type capability for the tool to continue to improve itself without manual intervention. And then lastly, I think it's always important for the CTO teams that are actually installing the product to make sure that their voice is heard in terms of ease of deployment, making sure there's, a low amount of maintenance and overhead, and that, both teams are aligned to saying this product is right for our environment, both from a business case and from a technology integration perspective.
Great advice. So now I'm going to ask you advice for us as a technology vendor. So we've had conversations over the last couple of weeks on what we do, how we do it, right? So I was very curious to hear, I'd love to hear your thoughts on where do you see the highest need for what we do in terms of ensuring we're delivering safe content to organizations, wherever the users are, anywhere the users are using it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think companies that are heavily file intensive, so companies that are interacting constantly with retail or business customers, so external from the environment, where documents and document sharing is just part of your core business. That is, a prime target. That's at the core of your security strategy and your crown jewels. I think environments that have heavy use of collaboration tools like Slack, where documents are being exchanged in a collaborative manner with external providers, that is a target-rich environment in terms of requirements. I also think that companies that do a lot of mergers and acquisitions, companies who have, a lot of board material that gets uploaded and downloaded from third parties collaborating on it, you want to make sure that those documents are not being targeted for potential spyware. You can obviously make a lot of money in the stock market if you can access sensitive material like that and front run some of the release information. So, I think it's those type of environments that clearly have a requirement for something like what Votiro is offering.
Great. That's great guidance for us. Thank you. Thank you, Moriah.
Sure.
Banks and financial services organizations are experiencing rapid change, as many other industries. What do you see as the biggest risk and challenges during this transformation?
Coming from some of the big financials is that a lot of their core banking back end, processing technology is still going to remain for some of the banks, not all. Obviously, Capital One, as an example, adopted a very early cloud first technology architecture, which, I don't think there's anything, on site and private that they're managing. But I think for some of the core banks, they are still keeping a lot of it on premise in terms of tech. But as new products and services are getting rolled out, they are looking at building new applications in AWS and in public cloud services because their capabilities around NLP, AI, customer relationship management systems, can be built a lot quicker than internal teams can. So the only challenge with that is that the race for innovation and being a digital first company is outpacing most security organizations' capabilities to secure it in a manner that's mature enough that regulators would expect, that is aligned to the maturity levels of, their legacy environments. Security organizations are typically having to self-learn a lot of this new environment themselves. They have to typically find out what the business is doing. That can lead to gaps. I also think that, there's been a lot of discussion. AI adoption is already happening. I can tell you, I speak to developers. Developers are using AI to assist them with a lot of their development. And we need to really make sure that the source code that they're using and sharing is number one, free from buggy security code, that we're obviously not, when we're sharing any code, that we're not revealing any private information. I think AI is also being integrated into, obviously, a lot of Microsoft's products. So when we are feeding any data into some of Microsoft's enterprise tools, it is going to a third party, maybe even a fourth and a fifth party, right? And that could be private information that is being used as part of a large language machine model to relearn and improve itself. So I think that's another challenge. And then of course, as we were talking about, I think zero trust architecture, which a lot of us are moving to. Massive amounts of information now are coming in and out through external cloud SaaS platforms. A lot of HR systems are cloud-based. Many banks are using Dropbox and Box. Salesforce is a cloud platform. So we're just having to manage more and more of this proliferation of external connection points versus before, where we had one SharePoint server on the inside of behind our firewall. Now there's just a lot more to manage. It's becoming more complex. That's why the top risk, as we talked about, was third party and supply chain.
Yeah, that actually the couple of the financial services focused challenges that you pointed out is clearly what we've heard quite a number of times with many banks and insurance companies as well. They're applying enterprise AI, training the models using unstructured data, and they quickly collect them into a data lake, and the source of the content is unknown. So how do you ensure that content is safe before you start to train your AI model and avoid the potential poisoning of that data in the first place, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I guess I have a question for you. It does sound that you have a very distinct value proposition for financial services in terms of keeping a lot of these files that we're talking about coming in and out of the organization secure. And there's a lot of solutions out there, but why do you think Votiro is the right fit today for this next gen architecture that's modernizing a lot of financial institutions?
It's two primary drivers. The first one is a secure enablement value proposition. I mean, we've all been in security for so long. We've gotten used to practices where the security team says, well, we're going to block it. And then you call IT to release the content, which is whether it's traditional AV or sandboxing. Right?
They're usually screaming at you in the middle of the night.
Exactly. But now with this hyper-connected digital systems, how do you enable safe use of that data? And then after you deliver the safe content, we can all geek out on the what was left behind. Did that actually become a zero-day attack? Was it a low vulnerability that is now a zero-day attack? Those are all things that we can enable. So that's the first main driver that we see, where we're helping organizations use technologies like Votiro to enable safe content delivery in that digital system, in that new digital architecture. And then after fact, analyze and provide the analytics to your SOC. And the analytics that we provide to the SOC is context. Context of files. How was it used? How was the data used? What was left behind? And that rich amount of context is to really help reduce the noise that's available in the SOC today. So those are our two main drivers that we see in providing this unique value proposition to financial and insurance companies.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying because, I've worked in a lot of organizations where we've set up legacy solutions for data leakage prevention, as an example. That would include scanning files 2 or 3 times deep. And oftentimes we would quarantine the files. We would have to hire a small a DLP team to manage any quarantine files. And I think probably most banks have gone into a situation where an investment banker is working on an IPO deal and they're working all night and their documents got stuck in the quarantine. They can't get a hold of the security team. And, there's a lot of frustration, because of that. And, for me, Votiro sounds like, it's a real-time, security tool that can ensure that safe files are coming in without the latency and without the frustration.
Exactly. And that's the value proposition we're helping with provide to financial services organizations, insurance companies, anywhere digital business processes are modernized, anywhere an old back office process is being digitized. We're helping organizations make sure that the content used in that process is safe. So thank you, Moriah, for your time today. It was very insightful to have you shed light and provide advice to both technology vendors like us and security leaders that are listening to this episode. This is the first episode of our quarterly CISO catch-up, and I look forward to sharing more insights from security leaders like you.
It was an absolute pleasure. It was a lot of fun, and love discovering about more of what you do. So I'll see you soon.